Hello, hello. We are just 15 minutes fashionably late for our wonderful workshop that we have today. We're doing GNM 101, GHK 101. We wanted to revisit the foundations, the basics. This is something, I have a hard time, coming across something and totally absorbing myself in it. And then I forget that a lot of people are brand new or they still haven't heard about it. And this might be your very first time hearing about German New Medicine, Germanische Heilkunde. And so hello, welcome. We're really excited for you to be here. This is totally life-changing, revolutionary information. And that is not hyperbole. It really does change everything about how you understand health and wellness and relationships and how you take care of your body. It's just different. A little bit about our background. We met in chiropractic school in Atlanta, Georgia, and we were really into health, really into wellness, really went into exercise and nutrition and all things health and well-being. And in 2017, I stumbled across, we were giving a workshop on magnesium supplementation, and I stumbled across this thing called German New Medicine. That's how I learned it at the time. And it blew my mind. It really radically transformed everything I thought I knew about health. And at the time, I thought I knew a lot. I thought I knew, how to get healthy, how to stay healthy. And I thought it had everything to do with exercise and nutrition and lifestyle. I thought that was the way to stay healthy, and aligning the spine and getting adjusted and all things that I taught in my practice. And then I found this work, and Steve and I, we had already kind of started to shift the way that we operate and the type of way that we helped people through the Ever Better Life course. So this was our first way of helping people apart from chiropractic, which was, hey, there's something going on in here. That was like the insight that we both had, right when Steve graduated. What year was that? When you graduated? 2014. 2014. So 2014, so I had already been practicing for a couple of years, and, we just started realizing that in our own lives and in the lives of the clients, the patients that were coming in, there was more to the story than simply eat this, don't eat that. If you follow this physical prescription, if you do all these things, you will be healthy. That's what I thought. I thought that if you just followed this checklist of eat these foods, don't eat these foods, do these exercises, take care of your body, there was an element for sure of positive mindset, but there wasn't this specific deep understanding that when a person has a chronic health issue, there's more to it than simply what they're eating. And we do not throw the baby out with the bathwater when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to exercise. We were both that's why we're late. We were both just busy exercising, moving our bodies, eating really high quality, wonderful nutrition. That's part of our life. That is what we do. That is a core essential piece of being well, is taking care of your physical vessel. But when it comes to chronic health issues, that's really where the answers in the lifestyle modification world kind of ended, and where the 5 biological laws of German New Medicine filled in all of the gaps, all of the confusion, all the misunderstanding. Because one of my big things that happened when I was in that world of holistic health and nutrition and exercise and lifestyle, and I really thought that, we are just the healthiest people on the planet, the people who live the way that I was prescribing and the way that I thought was absolutely best. But then things would happen, like one of the leaders in the organization that we were a part of developed cancer, like out of nowhere. And it came fast and furious, and they did all this stuff, and he, went away for a little while, and then it came back, and it was like, I thought we were doing everything right. I thought that if we avoided these toxins and ate these foods and did these things, that cancer wouldn't happen. And then in comes the GNM. And so big picture about Dr. Hammer's story. So that's kind of the entry point for how this was even discovered. So I read this story about this man who developed testicular cancer after his son died. And he just knew that there was a connection, because the loss of his son, it was this shocking, unexpected. If you want to know more about the story, there is a documentary. I'm not sure if it's still on Netflix. I haven't checked lately, but there's a documentary called The King Who Never Was, where you'll get an insight into the craziness of what happened to Dr. Hammer, how the exiled crown prince of Italy shot a gun and it hit Dirk Hammer through the side of a boat. I think he shot twice, and then, taken to the hospital, and surgeries and amputations and all of these, attempts to save his life, but ended up being, given morphine and, was killed by all these procedures. And Dr. Hammer obviously was devastated and shocked and lost his gorgeous son at 17. And so a couple months after, he develops testicular cancer. He just knew there was a connection, and then had the chance to start observing patients in an oncology unit that he was working in. And he started to go through, study their files, what happened to these people. What happened to these people prior to their diagnosis? And, through studying their files and talking with them, this pattern started to emerge of the connection between some shocking event in that person's life, something that caught them off guard, that was highly acute and dramatic. They felt totally isolated and alone with this problem, and their body developed some type of cancer. And then he looked at the pattern. There was a pattern that was starting to emerge between the type of event that happened in the person's life and the type of cancer. And so he found that every single time there was this type of cancer, he looked in the file, he talked to the person, he saw they experienced this type of event. And he started to see this language of nature emerge that, so for himself, testicular cancer, it was a loss. He lost his son. And so every man he spoke to who had testicular cancer, they also had some type of loss of a loved one. Every woman who had a glandular breast cancer had a worry, someone they were so concerned for, the well-being of somebody in their tribe, in their nest, in their family, their child. Everyone who had lung cancer had a death fright. They thought they were going to die. They had a death fright shock. And so he started to see that there seems to be a connection between what happens in that person's life, what's happening in their organs. And so he thought to look in the brain. He started to look at CT brain scans and found that there was a correlation between, there was an impact, this circle formation that looks like when you drop a pebble in a pond, this ring shapes occur in the brain at specific locations that are always correlated to the organ. So every time someone has testicular cancer, there's an impact in a particular spot in the brain. And for lung cancer, it's a different spot. For colon cancer, it's a different spot. There's different relays that control different organs that are always correlated to different life experiences. And Dr. Hammer said that when he realized, when all of this is kind of coming together, I often will kind of imagine the movie made, The Beautiful Mind, of just all of this coming together. He said he got weak in the knees, and he's like, hold on, am I actually, seeing the correlation and discovery for why the body develops cancer? And that night he had a dream, and Dirk, his son, the one who passed away, came to him in his dream, and he said, yes, Father, that you're on the right track, you're figuring out, but there's more for you to discover. And so that, gave him this confidence and courage as he continued to discover these correlations. And he was meticulous in his research and the way that he looked at these connections, and they were always correct. And in 1981, he had this thesis, he submitted it to the University of Tübingen, and nobody would look at it. At least they didn't look at it formally. Behind closed doors they did. And so, so this work has been suppressed. It has been, because when you really understand what a big deal this is, you will get why the mainstream cannot touch this. It has to be a forbidden, don't do that, oh, that's dangerous, oh, he's doing crazy stuff, he's a wacko. They have to look at it that way, because it changes everything otherwise. So that's a little bit of the, the overview of the intro. I would love to get some of Steve's thoughts, because this is Steve. He's wonderful. The thing with GNM and this work was, this was my big, I'm the one who found it initially. I'm the one who nerded out on it. Steve, he, probably like many of your husbands out there, is... the guys don't get into it as much. I mean, especially, it's interesting in the United States community, or, over here in North America, it tends to be more women. I guess in Europe it is more men that come and study the biological laws, but here it's mostly women, and they're kind of like, hey husband, come look at this thing that I'm into. So it's helpful to have Steve here because he wasn't the one who kind of drank the Kool-Aid and got right into it and was really enthusiastic. He was kind of more like, okay, let's check this out. Let's look at this. And so it's been very interesting to have his perspective and approach to this. For me, it just made perfect sense. I kind of got rabidly excited about it and wanted to shout it from the rooftops and tell the whole world, hey, have you heard of German New Medicine? And so, so I really love to hear Steve's perspective of this because he just puts it in a different way and has a different flavor in the way that he describes things.
I mean, I wasn't really skeptical. It was more or less interest. It wasn't like I was like interested in something else. It wasn't like I was really, I don't know, I was really interested in, eating clay for your health or something. And I was like, oh no, I don't think GNM matters. I think it's all about the clay. I just not that interested in health. Like, I like to work out. I like to eat food that I think of as healthy. Well, that's pretty much it. That like, this and all this. Like, if you would have found the secret to health and illness, which, if you would have found that and presented it to me, I'd say, oh, fantastic. It's similar to the shape of the earth. I don't care. I just don't care. I don't know, and I'm not interested, right? I understand why someone would be interested in it. I'm not that interested in it. And so it was, but you had enough interest for both of us. And then,
Certainly.
The thing I think about the way we do things that's different, or why people I think sometimes gravitate towards our approach to it is that very much in terms of practical. You study GNM for a while, and unless your interest in it is purely academic, ooh, I love this chart, and I like to know this, and oh, there's this phase, and then there's this phase. I like biology, I like embryology, etc. And there are people who are really much that way. Sometimes people get stuck there to their own detriment, just because it's good to be able to apply it too. But pretty quickly, if you're trying to use GNM to solve a problem that you have, or if you're trying to use GNM as part of your approach to solving some kind of a health problem, it becomes clear pretty quickly, oh, this health issue I'm experiencing is related to the fact that I'm angry at my husband, or upset that he cheated on me, or this health problem is because I'm worried about my child. Okay, well, great. What do I do about that? And that's kind of where, my area comes in, changing how you think about your world, changing how you experience your world, problem solving in terms of like, okay, is there something that we can do to change this situation? This is one of the getting into the, so, when I was thinking about GNM and how we approach it, there's basically three things that you want to do. The first thing is to understand the core German New Medicine principles. Whether you agree with it or not, it's really nice to understand what it is that you are agreeing or disagreeing with. Most people don't have time to do that. Most people are so in a hurry to get to agreement or disagreement that they don't really actually have time to understand the thing that they're agreeing with or disagreeing with, because they either want to become an evangelist or they want to become sort of a persecuting Paul-like character, who's very anti the thing. And so it's great to really kind of understand what it is that you are super into or super opposed to. So anyway, get the core principles. What is this guy saying? What is the claim? What is the claim, right? And then the next thing is, okay, what do you do about it? What do I care about in my life, my personal life, right? What health issues or concerns do I or my clients have, or friends or family? That's a little harder. Friends and family, they often don't want to listen to you. But what concerns do I have that this might provide sort of a practical solution to? And then the third one is, and this is kind of like, I would say if I have a specialty, it's this. There are unique aspects of your life situation, and there's also unique aspects of your own kind of personality and quirks, and like your hang-ups and your, past traumas and your idiosyncrasies and your all that different stuff that will make it easier, maybe sometimes harder, for you to apply a principle to your particular situation, to get over that, to let that be okay, to do what you need to do to change that situation. Some people have a really hard time breaking up with somebody. Some people have a really hard time trusting somebody. Do you say, and maybe that's the solution, maybe that's the thing that's going to be required in order to resolve the conflict. Well, great, I have a hard time doing that. What am I going to do? Then, then I can help a person with that. That's sort of what I like. But, one of the things about German New Medicine is, okay, and I'm sure you'll probably go back to some of the details of the principles and all that, but basically, okay, you have these symptoms, these organs are affected, according to the GNM sort of atlas of symptoms and all this, that's related to this kind of a conflict, right? That means that there was a loss situation, and there was an an experience of loss within you, the organism. So the best thing that you can do in situations like that is, look, don't psychologize it. Don't sit around and ponder why you aren't okay with loss. Replace the loss. Just say, if you're worried about your children, keep your children safe, or do something that will persuade you that your children are safe. Move closer to them, move them away from that plate. The practical solution is best, assuming that the practical solution is an option. So don't beat around the psychological or spiritual bush. Figure out what you're actually upset about, what you actually care about, and go take care of that to the best of your ability. That's great. And then a lot of the time, the world doesn't really cooperate with you. And a lot of the time, honestly, people are in the market for having difficulty. And so it's astonishing how few people who come to a coach of some kind for help, how few people are in the market for, which is to say they're seeking and also receptive to and also active in their application of practical solutions. A lot of people's main problem is they, in some way or other, are not capable of receiving a practical solution and applying the practical solution. Okay, let's iron that wrinkle out. Let's figure out what we can do about that. So you can see how quickly starting with something that's related to health turns into that there's not this dividing line between your financial life, your relationship life, and your health life. It's related. And this really, I think, gives you a clear template for understanding some of that stuff. We quickly get into what's wrong with me that prevents me from doing what I need to do given what I know based upon this healing science, based upon this, here's what I know I need to do. Why am I not doing it? That's sort of like what I'm into, is assisting a person. To say, okay, GNM has told us what you specifically need to do. Why haven't you done it yet? What are the challenges? What stops you? How do you stop yourself, etc. So
yeah, that's often what my conversations with people are. It's like, they're like, I know that's what I should do. I know that's how I should be viewing this situation. I know that's how I should be thinking about it, but I'm not. I'm having trouble consistently applying the tools for awareness, for paying attention, for doing what makes sense, right? I'm neglecting certain aspects of my, how I think about things. I'm allowing myself to go into the worry and the fear. And so that's where, the tools that we had prior to coming across GNM were how to understand, why do I perceive it this way? Why do I think this way? Why do I behave this way? Why do I do the things I do? Why am I this way? Right? And that is shaped by, yes, the previous things that have happened to you. And the more that you understand. So this is really, there's so much about self-understanding. Do I understand why I am reactive to this? Why I am passive about this? Why do I do and respond the way that I do? And so our main work, and we teach this now through Awareness School, is paying attention. What's happening? How am I reacting? How am I feeling? Do I even notice? Do I notice when my hands are cold? Do I notice when I'm compulsively thinking? Do I notice when I'm compulsively have something on my mind? And so just to overview the 5 biological laws, because this is going to help as the framework for these basics. The basic understanding is that you are an organism. You have a biological innate wisdom that is running your entire body. And it is always paying attention to your experience. Your experience is conveying information about your surroundings at all times. And its number one thing is safety. Safety. Are we okay? Are we safe? Are we going to survive? It's really fascinating. We've got to observe animals, right? Because animals are so much closer to their nature, right? Because they don't have all of the thoughts and the distractions and the ego and all the stuff going on up here. They're just doing life, and it's so lovely and wonderful to watch. We've got 2 cows, we have 7 ducks and 8 chickens, and they're just so fun to watch. And these ducks, especially, we have these 3 new ducks, these runner ducks, and they all the time are so concerned for their safety. Right? The term sitting duck. These ducks are very aware that they are prey, that they need to be aware all of the time. And even though we take care of them, we love them, we give them food and water and shelter and make sure that they are okay, they don't get it. Their innate instinctual behavior is, get away, I need to hide, I need to be safe. There's a part of you that's like that. There's a part of you that is like that. It is constantly saying, are we safe? Is everything okay? And your experience of the world is sending messages to that part. And if you have a moment in time, and so this is what Dr. Hammer found, that And this is a big difference. This is a humongous difference between other understandings of the connection between stress and disease and this specific biological understanding of the intentional adaptations the body makes in response to a shocking moment in time. So there's a specificity to this first biological law, which is and this is called the DHS. You'll hear us talk about the conflict shock, the conflict. This is a conflicting moment. And the way I like to put it is, life looks one way before the conflict, right? And it's like a BC before conflict. Life looks a certain way to you. And then a conflict happens, which is a highly acute, dramatic situation that caught you off guard. You were unprepared. This was unexpected. It was out of the blue, rug pulled out from underneath you, and you felt totally alone in the situation. Those are the criteria to meet the threshold for this is a conflict shock, right? And one of the ways I like to describe it is like the Control-Alt-Delete on the computer, because you can have an isolating situation. You can have an unexpected situation that isn't isolating. You can have something dramatic, but it wasn't unexpected, right? You can have all these different elements, but it's the coming together of all three of them, like when you put Control-Alt-Delete on the computer, that's what brings up the special menu. And so when you have these three things that happen, right, at the same time, highly acute, dramatic, unexpected, isolated, I feel all alone. Basically, it goes beyond your conscious mind's reasoning of the situation. Your biology steps in. Your biology steps in and it analyzes and assesses the nature of the situation. And that is filtered through you, through your past experiences, through stuff that's happened to you before, through your organismic history, right? So this very smart part of your innate intelligence assesses the situation and it determines based on the flavor of what happened. Was it loss? Was it separation? Was it self-devaluation? Was it, I can't do this, I'm not up to this, I'm not able? Was it about a morsel? Was it about something that you wanted? I wanted the water, I wanted the food, I wanted the money, I wanted the thing. What was it about? Something happened, your psyche, that's how it's described by Dr. Hammer, the psyche, which isn't, I think psyche for many people brings up the idea of like the conscious mind, the thinking mind. The psyche is not just the conscious thinking mind. It's the whole. It's all of it. It's this innate sense, this innate beingness that is assessing all of the time the safety and danger of the environment, the temperature, the sounds that are around you, all of the time. It's constantly calibrating everything that's needed in order for you to keep on living, to keep on surviving. And so that wisdom, when we have that conflict shock, that DHS, Dirk-Hammer syndrome, you get the phone call, something really bad happened to someone you care about. Totally caught off guard, totally alone, totally isolated, totally shocked. And your biology assessed it.
The gasp, there. The gasp.
Yeah,
you know what gasp? Are you a gasper? Do you know gasping? I mean, some people gasp, I think, recreationally. But a genuinely gasp-inducing situation. Would you say that would be a good example of a conflict?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now contrast that with something you don't like. Or you know what I'm saying? Something that's sort of mildly irritating. You can see an irritation coming from a mile away. That's different than an irritation that you were sitting in a place of like a distinct conflict, right? You're sitting in a place where everything's calm and fine, and then your spouse or your children do something. And like, the event maybe is not surprising. They don't take their shoes off in their muddy shoes. Well, they always fail or frequently fail to take their shoes off. But you were sitting at the kitchen counter, seeing a space of equanimity, and there was an event intrudes upon your state of mind, right? Do you know, say there's like inner peace and calm, and then something happens and it's like a shattering of the peace and calm. Everything's fine, everyone's alive, news comes, someone's dead, or someone's been harmed, or there's something like, it's that kind of an interruptive element. And it's not even the, and this is something that's been interesting for me to discover. It's not the severity of the situation. You can have a conflict over quite minor life events. We've got some funny stories about that. It's the surprising element, and that acute in that moment. I was really taken aback by it. People sometimes, loved ones, especially elderly loved ones, people have been sick for a long time, people pass away. and there's not always a conflict. It's expected. You even know this, just kind of like, sort of folk wisdom or from personal experience, that someone dies is very important to you. It's never like a happy event. I mean, I guess in some, certain people have an outlook where it is kind of a lovely thing. They've, gone on to the next stage of whatever. But like for the most part, there's a sadness there. But it's totally different when, it's different when an airplane goes, okay, we're coming in for a landing. And we go, okay, you're coming in for a landing. It's a little bumpy or whatever, but they're coming in for a landing. Versus an airplane that just kind of drops out of the sky. It's different. There's this kind of like shock value to it. And it's oftentimes that shock value part that makes these things so disturbing, that the psyche was utterly unprepared for what happened. I don't think this is a true story, but it's a useful reference point. Anytime someone hits me in the stomach or plays a game with me and like I'm not ready, I say, that's how Houdini died, I think it's John Candy said that, right? I think that's Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Oh my gosh,
anyway,
that's gotten so much in the
right.
cultural, even if it's not true, that's funny.
That's how Houdini died, But anyway, like the idea is that because he would, as part of his show, receive punches to his stomach and like maybe be hit by a board or something like that. But the story was that he was punched in the stomach and he was not prepared for it, and for whatever reason that killed him. It was like the early 1900s, things were different. And so the point is that when you're prepared for something, your body can take all sorts of things. That unpreparedness is that kind of disorienting thing. So that's really, it's useful for you in terms of just noticing what is and isn't a conflict. Because a lot of times what will happen is you'll experience a conflict in response to something, and in retrospect, that thing doesn't seem like that big of a deal to you. How it seems in retrospect isn't relevant. How it seemed in the moment, or we'll say what it was like in the moment, that's really what's relevant. I mean, it could be a really minor thing like, I broke a tongue scraper that for whatever reason was near and dear to me. I mean, it was just part of my daily routine, this tongue scraper, and it was metal, and it didn't seem like it was going to break, and I was using it, and it just snapped under normal circumstances. And here I am, I'm kind of like bleary in the morning. I'm not really, and I'm going through motions, and I'm like totally automated, first thing in the morning. And this thing snaps, and it's like, this thing's important to me. This is like a ritual that I have to do every day. I for whatever reason, like, if I can't like brush my teeth and have my mouth washed, I'm like grumpy all morning. It's like I need it. It's like I need to do it, And so later on, it's actually really funny that I had a sneezing fit that morning, and Melissa, as usual, was trying to diagnose me, just to say, what was the stink conflict? And I mean, you said, this is, how the men are. I'm like, come on. Yeah, it's great, whatever. I'm sure there was, I don't know what it was. I'm just sneezing. Leave me alone. It was kind of like the whole thing. And then later that evening, this is kind of illustrative of how this stuff applies to your real life. Later that evening, so I broke the tongue scraper. I kind of tossed it in on the kitchen counter, I think intending to throw it away, or maybe I wanted to get the name of it or something before I threw it away. So I just maybe I just failed to throw it away because, sometimes that's what we do. Put it on the counter instead of in the trash, even though it's going to go to the trash eventually, and the trash is like 3 feet away. Later that evening, I was not so grumpy because it was the evening time, not the morning time. And I was saying to Melissa, I've been thinking about that sneeze attack, and I just can't figure out what it was about. I don't really know. And as I was doing it, I was gesturing, which is something I have a tendency to do. I think I've done it on this video with this pen. And then as I was talking to her about how I just don't know what this was about, I looked down and realized I was holding the broken tongue scraper. I had no idea I was doing it. It was as though something in the depths of my being was trying to say, hey, stupid, this is what it was about. But that's a very interesting example for a couple of reasons. Like, one, the way that the awareness of what the conflict was, the way it emerges into your mind is oftentimes, and that kind of it percolates up from the, like you said, some part of the psyche other than what you like think of as the conscious mind. And then the other thing is, it doesn't have to be a huge deal. I mean, I didn't go through like a mourning or a grieving process about my tongue scraper. Do you know what I'm saying? But it was utterly surprising to me. Never in a million years would have expected that thing to snap in my hands that way, and it was inconvenient. And so I think acute and dramatic, in that second, it took me off guard, and that was sufficient.
Yeah, we kind of talked about it. It's like, I was like, what exactly was the thing about it? It was the unexpectedness. And with the stink conflict, I couldn't sniff it out. I couldn't anticipate.
Didn't see that coming.
I didn't see this coming.
See, there was no signs of wear on this tongue scraper. Now, see, if I had seen, oh boy, look at that. See, it's getting brittle there in the middle. That would have been a different thing.
Totally different. That would have taken out that surprise element, that unexpected element. And that was actually a question that somebody, asked about, can it just be an unexpected shock? But it has to be, again, it has to matter to you. So like something else that didn't matter, that wasn't part of your daily routine, that broke unexpectedly. Again, it could have been unexpected, but it wasn't relevant to you. It's like,
it has to matter in the moment.
Right.
Again, it doesn't have to matter in retrospect. Have you ever gotten really angry about something and then in retrospect it didn't seem like a big deal? You can have a conflict about that. It mattered in the moment. And so that's one of those things people have a hard time with. They'll want to say that wasn't a conflict because now that I've gotten over it, it doesn't seem like that big of a deal. Well, does World War II seem like a big deal to you? It's like, probably not, because it's over. It's been over. You weren't even involved. And so there is this kind of sense in which you don't want to say it wasn't a conflict, because now when I think about it, it doesn't seem like it ought to have been a conflict. There's often a difference between what constitutes a conflict and what you, in retrospect, think ought to. We have this idea about how dramatic and terrible an event would have to be in order to constitute a conflict. Sometimes huge dramatic events occur, and for whatever reason, the person they're just not impacted in that way. Other occasions, much more minor things, So I think that, there wasn't, I remember it, so I'm thinking about it right back, there was an element of shock to the tongue scraper breaking.
You did shout.
That I can't understand. I did. I said, and I don't know why it surprised me like that, you see, but it did. And so I think looking at that, I can't believe they did that. You see what I'm saying? I just can't believe that happened. That many different things had to go wrong, and they all went wrong. And so there is that kind of I can't wrap my mind around it kind of a thing. Versus those situations where you're extremely annoyed. Maybe you're more annoyed, but you're less surprised. And so there's not, the moment of shock. So you just have to be really shocked in a moment, I think. It just takes a second.
Right. And so what at this shocking moment, all three of these elements are present. Your brain computer, right? The smarter innate part of you, not your thinking mind, but your innate wisdom turns on a biological adaptation, which means it changes some type of tissue in the body. And the tissues in the body can do just a couple of things. They can grow more tissue, right, to better digest something. Like if you really were, you're salivating after something, right? We use words like that. Isn't that interesting? We use, I'm just salivating after, this lover, after this bike I want. I just want it so badly. The brain can perceive that like this morsel that you literally want to salivate. You want to take it in, and so it can produce additional glandular tissue to better salivate the morsel. So you have more saliva to better take the thing in.
People say, I could just eat you up. I say that sometimes they say about children that are very cute to them. Sometimes they say it about people I think that they're interested in, right? What do they say? Good enough to eat? Good enough to eat? Do they say that? Sweet enough to, what? Yeah, there's weird, you say it, and you learn pretty quickly to kind of translate those colloquialisms. Why you say that? Why did people start saying that? It's in some way or other a conveyance of some, you're a tube. Alan Watts talked about this. You're biologically speaking, you're basically a tube. There's an entry and an exit, and pretty much what tubes do is consume things and expel the waste products of those things. And so we are obviously more than tubes. We've got a very interesting whole body sort of built around the tube, but still at heart, tubes. And so it's interesting that the dearest desires of our heart, which is to say that if you're a mother or a grandmother and you just want your grandchildren nearby, you go, I could just eat you up, right? See, that's the tube talking. Do you know what I mean? And if you compare, if you've ever been very, very hungry and there's food nearby, you're at a restaurant and you're particularly starving, you're really hungry. Maybe you've been exercising or whatever, or something weird's going on with you for whatever reason. You've got that acute hunger. There's a seriousness that sets in. There's a focus and there's a seriousness, and you're not stealing food off of other people's plates, but there are feelings inside where you have to exercise a little bit of prefrontal activity to not grab a fry off the tray as it goes by or something like that, yeah. Too. And so, and then if you take that experience and then you think about when you really want something, think about the intensity with which you contemplate the pay raise, the job, the partner, the attention. It can be attention, it can be an abstract kind of a thing. It is a very similar kind of single-mindedness of desire. So if you think about desire in terms of a tube, what does it want? It wants to put it in, it wants to consume it, And so it seems odd to people, I think, sometimes that the salivary glands or whatever would react to something that's got nothing to do with literally swallowing. But there is this overlap between it. And you have to remember, no matter how much you think you're a brain, the tube kind of grew the brain so that the tube could have better luck going around and finding things to consume. So
exactly. So each of these different tissues, it just has a way that it responds. So the glandular tissue creates more tissue. So we have better ability to digest something. And it's very interesting too. There's the archaic, like there's the air morsel. So like the morsel of air, there's sound morsels, there's visual morsels. And so there's different ways that the body, takes in and digests and processes the world. And so it depends on, again, the assessment of your biology. And that's what's cool is we work backwards. And this is, some people will be like, oh, well, that's affirming the consequence. We work backwards because the symptom is telling us the story of the adaptation that occurred previously. So once you have a symptom, and Dr. Hammer, he looked to see, is this the case every single time? And it was a consistent pattern recognition that shows that when someone has a tonsil that has been enlarged, they had a morsel conflict. And the right side of the tonsil is wanting the morsel, the left side of the tonsil is wanting to get rid of it. And so there's a consistency to these patterns that show this is what this tissue does. When you experience this type of conflict, once you have this type of change on your body, it's indicating to us an experience that initiated those changes in the tissue. Someone asked about eczema. And so again, what's another phrase that we say if someone's getting under your skin, or I want to be really close to you, or get off me, you make my skin crawl, right? You make my skin crawl. That is a separation conflict. This is the biggest outermost organ is the skin. And so that has everything to do with touch, with communication, with separation, wanting closeness, not wanting closeness. And so when you are in the conflict of a separation conflict, something different happens. So in the old tissue, that glandular tissue builds and grows during the conflict active phase. The outer skin, it erodes. You have micro ulcerations in the skin when you are in the midst of an active separation conflict. And so that again is, I really want to touch you, or I really want to separate from you. So what the body does is it ulcerates the skin, so it becomes less sensitive, and you also have short-term memory loss. And so you have this memory loss because nature is merciful. It is for nature, it's better to forget the one that you're missing, right, than to feel the pain of their absence. Do you remember when you were a kid? I just remember this so vividly. There are a lot of like neighborhood cats, and you just want to go pick up the kittens in the neighborhood, and they're like, don't touch the kittens. If you touch them, then their mother will forget that they exist, or your smell will be on them and the mom will forget them. I remember hearing that. But that is, when there is a separation conflict, there's memory loss. And so people that are dealing with dementia and memory loss, we know that person has experienced a lot of separation conflicts. So again, we always have to look, what's the biological purpose of this? Why would the body do this? Why does this make sense? That's the essential question that's missing in all of conventional medicine. A person goes in and they say, oh, I'm having this or that symptom. They'll say, oh, let's poke around and see what we find. They find something. They find a growth. They find something going on with an organ or a tissue, and they say, well, this is going wrong. Let's cut this out, or let's put a stent in there. They never ask, why would this tissue do this? Why would this tissue do this? That's the essential question. What is this tissue's function and role and purpose in the body? The skin. The skin's about touching. What did you touch? What touches are you missing? Would be the obvious question to ask if you were operating from a biological perspective. But because they operate from something's wrong with you, how can I intervene? How can I fix you? Rather than seeing, ooh, what is going on that's issuing forth an adaptation in your body. And this, I wanted to interject this at some point. This is for stuff that just seems to arise on its own, right? Not when there's like an obvious physical, external thing that caused the symptom. Like an injury is an injury. Like that thing with the punch, that could have just been an injury. It could have been, too much pressure, right? If you get, in an accident, that is the physical tissues of the body couldn't withstand the force, the pressure. And so, there was a bleed out, or, something ruptured. That's not conflict related. We can have things that rupture, or, discs that tear because we had a previous self-devaluation conflict that weakened the connective tissue. That can make someone more prone to some type of injury. That is something that can happen. But an injury is an injury, and that doesn't have to do with a biological adaptation program. So again, it's like an external physical thing. Another example is with an overt poison, right? Or if you breathe in a big nose full of pepper and then you sneeze, it's like, oh, there was physical particles in my nose that my body had to get out, right? And so, yeah, that probably also was unexpected that you had, snorted a big nose full of pepper. You probably
did it on purpose.
Unless you did it on purpose, right? The biology.
I've done that. I think I've done that.
You've snorted pepper
As a child,
on purpose?
yeah,
Okay, so yeah, people, kids do things like that, but the biology is going to say, okay, we're going to sneeze this out. And so was it necessarily a conflict? No, it wasn't unexpected. You did it on purpose, but your nose said, we don't want this in here, right? So that's like an immediate reflexive response to an obvious something that got where it's not supposed to be. And so with poisoning, that again is like this overt, you drank something, you thought it was Gatorade and it was radiator fluid, I don't know. And your body immediately detects, oh, we have to get rid of this. And so it's not, yes, this is indigestible to the body, so this is not something necessarily that the psyche, so your biology can take over, even if, again, you probably tasted it. That's why it's so hard, I find, even to, kind of split apart because you're having an experience. If you get poisoned by something, or you get something put in your body, you had an experience of what that was like. And oftentimes that can be conflicting as well. So there's a lot of layers to it, but the official exclusions from the biological programs are poisoning, injury, and severe malnutrition. So not having the nutrients that you need. An example that I've given recently about that is our cow. When her milk came in, and this has happened twice, where I milked her way too much, or when the milk comes in initially, they'll give the cows a tube of calcium magnesium, because that's necessary for muscular contraction. And if you don't give it to them, they can be, they have muscle spasms because their muscles, all the calcium and magnesium got pulled out of the body and put into the milk bag, and then they don't have it for their muscular contraction and function. So that would be an example of a deficiency, right? So the muscular spasms normally would be a stuckness conflict. So if you're having trouble with muscular function, that's a motor stuckness conflict. But in this case, there's a motor conflict that's due to not having the necessary nutrients for muscular contraction. And so those are the three exception examples. These are things that seem to arise on their own. Allergies, right? Chronic issues, cancer, and psychosis. So mental, what they call mental illnesses or psychoses. That is when you have double conflict. Sometimes people will say, they'll be like, well, I've had so much trauma in my life. If this were true, I'd be riddled with cancer. There's this conflict and that conflict. And that's where the psychoses come in. When you have a lot of conflict, when you get bombarded with conflict and it hits you on each hemisphere of your brain, I was really impressed with the connection up until this point. So when you're bombarded with double conflict, basically it's like if you plugged a bunch of outlets into the wall at the same time, right? It would suck so much power, or it takes so much energy. The brain does something different. So when you have a lot of conflicts, it shifts into what are called constellations. And so the constellation is where you leave the normal realm of reality and you shift into an alternate view of reality, which allows you to be able to live with these conflicts. So if you have a scare fright conflict and a territorial fear conflict, you go into the flying constellation, where people say they have an out-of-body experience where they've astrally projected, or they feel totally kind of disassociated and disembodied. A lot of people depersonalization, they feel like they're just not landed in their body. They're like, I'm kind of somewhere up here. I'm kind of looking down at everything. Well, that's because you had a scare fright and a territorial fear and a scare fright bombarding your brain. And so the psyche said, we need to leave this plane. We need to go into another realm. And people in flying constellations are really interested perhaps in actual literal flying, skydiving. They're interested in things beyond this realm. They're interested in outer space and, Star Trek and Star Wars and all these different worlds and Harry Potter. And can I escape here because here's too scary? And so that's if a person feels like, I don't understand, how could I not be, have all this, you probably have constellations. You definitely have constellations. Basically, you kind of, in the modern world, most everybody has some type of constellation. And this is also what gives us our quirks and our gifts, and all sorts of very interesting abilities open up with the constellation. So that's kind of a topic all on its own. But I just want
most of the things I've got constellation.
I have constellations, you have constellations, you surely have, we all have constellations. It's okay. Yes. So where were we? First biological law, all the three elements, before the conflict, after the DHS, you see the world differently. That thing that happened, it flavored how you see the conflict. Is, a conflict is resolved when it can't happen again, or when you can laugh about it. That's when it's, you have to make the distinction between a conflict being little r resolved and big R resolved, right? Is it resolved for now because it's off my radar, because it's not in my face, because other things have become more important, but it's reactivatable? Or is it big R resolved, done, never, ever, 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 ever is this going to happen again, right? It's finished. And so that is something where most people, especially if you're dealing with something chronic, if you have a chronic health issue that hasn't gone away with all the diets you've tried and all of the detoxes and all of the supplements and all the things that you've been doing to try to get rid of this chronic issue, it's a chronic conflict. It's a chronic experience. It's something that happened, right? You had the highly acute, dramatic, caught off guard moment, right? The BCAD, you started seeing the world differently, and that thing's not finished. It may have changed or is different, but it's still there, and you're still stepping on the track. And so when someone has a chronic skin issue, chronic digestive issue, chronic anything, there's a track that you're stepping on. And most of the time, you are a fish in water to these tracks. You're not aware of them. You don't know that you are you're engaging unconsciously with that topic, with that subject, in a way that's reminding your biology of the thing that happened. And that's where awareness, we have to start paying attention. We did a workshop one time on self-evaluation, and did some exercises to help develop awareness. And one of the women who took the class was like, I had no idea. I was really frustrated about trying to figure out my self-evaluation conflict. But after doing those exercises, I realized I'm in a self-evaluation all the time, and I just didn't recognize it, because it was just my way of seeing the world. Because when you have a conflict, it shapes the way you see the world. It shapes the way you see yourself. And if everything in the way that you're thinking is influenced by that conflict that happened, a lot of times you can't see it. And so that's why, the tools and the exercises, kind of the way that we do things in awareness school, and just like the way that we talk, and the way that we help draw. Well, now I'm watching and I don't know what I'm seeing. I'm getting overwhelmed. I'm getting scared of every thought that I think. I think the thoughts are going to come. The thoughts don't. See. This is where Steve comes in.
This is step 2 and 3. You see what I'm talking about? You have to watch all that stuff and see. Good grief! You need a problem solver. You need your mind to be a problem solver that does not manufacture more problems than it solves. That ability to observe a problem without creating a problem, observe a problem without reacting in a way that creates a problem. You have to have that. That's I don't know if that is GNM, but that's sort of like implied by it. You want to figure out, I think certainly in GNM, you want to be able to figure out what's bothering you. Probably outside of GNM, most of the time, most people think it's a good idea to know if you're upset, know what you're upset about. And then beyond that, have the ability to observe what's happening mentally and emotionally. Maybe even know about a relationship between what's going on mentally and emotionally and something that maybe is going on physically. And then not have that awareness of the connection send you into some sort of a spiral. Really, being a functional person consists of the ability to observe your dysfunctions, as they're occurring, without reacting in a way that is dysfunctional. that it's not having problems. It's having problems and not reacting to those problems in a way that's a problem. If you want to do it right, that's it. Sorry. It's not having your stuff together. It's looking at where you don't have your stuff together and not making an even bigger mess in reaction to that, not being intimidated by it so that you go unconscious, and then also not being like compelled to compulsively engage in ways that, pretty obviously aren't working. That's it. That's what you have to learn how to do. And if you have that skill set, if you are even like in the process of developing that skill set, then it becomes much easier to deal with what you discover as a result of observing yourself with the kind of GNM glasses on. I think I have this conflict, or I have this problem. I mean, one or two things usually happens. Either a person has a health issue, and then they find out what their kind of psychological, emotional problem that's related to the health issue is, but we say that's causing the health issue. And then they get all uptight about not being able to change how they feel. That's like one situation. The other situation is maybe the person doesn't have a health issue right now. I don't know, maybe their parents died from something. And they know, then they learn about what conflicts cause those symptoms. They realize they have similar conflicts, or they know they're predisposed to having it. And then they lie in bed at night worrying they're going to kill themselves slowly over a long period of time because they're going to get conflicted about something. Or if my husband does this, or if this ever happened to my children, or if that kind of a thing happened to me, I'd have this conflict, and now I'm afraid of getting that. That's not useful. You as a human being have to have kind of control over your mind so that you can use all of the information that you gather in order to kind of move toward what you want, instead of using that information against yourself. Self-devaluation people are especially predisposed to this. They're especially bad about this. Not surprisingly, people will devalue themselves because they can't figure out what their self-devaluation is. They devalue themselves because even though they know what their self-devaluation pattern is, they can't stop devaluing themselves, and they devalue themselves because they're devaluing themselves. And a lot of this is finding the part of you that thinks that it makes sense to do what doesn't work because you just notice that you're doing what doesn't work. And that takes a lot of self-observation. That's where the stuff gets uncomfortable. A lot of people like this material when it's all about conflicts and my body and this tissue and that tissue and here's the impact and it's also interesting and look at these charts. Isn't it interesting? Oh yes, and then my hands are hot and then they're cold and all that. But when it comes time to seeing how you react to yourself, how you react to life, how you react to situations, then it becomes intensely personal. Because usually people are more identified with their kind of mental activities, including the one that don't serve them. They're more identified with that than they are with their own body. They kind of talk about their body almost like they talk about a pet that's misbehaving. My dog keeps chewing the furniture. My joints keep hurting. Do you know what I mean? Like my, it's like it's part of you, but it's sort of at a distance. It's like a nice clothes that you wear. It's a suit, Oh boy. But when it comes to your tendency to devalue yours, if you really want to hurt somebody's feelings, what you do is point out to them how much of their mental activity doesn't help them, and then start suggesting that they not do it. That is deeply offensive to people. And I don't even mean offended in the way like they get mad at you. I mean, it's painful to stop being some way. It's disorienting. It's difficult to do. It's like pulling concrete posts that have been set in cement in the ground, pulling those things up. That's kind of like where this work is heading, just so you know. I mean, a lot of people were kind of, they like the science-y stuff and they like another methodology and all that. At the end of the day, or if you're going to really consistently apply this stuff in your life, probably it's going to involve changing a good deal of that inner self, that part of you that there's these very powerful inclinations to react in particular ways when things that you don't want happen. And it's oftentimes sort of jostling those loose through observation. So.
Yes, I'm going to ask, wouldn't the muscular contractions in the cow do them being stuck in milk? Well, here's the thing. She was never stuck. She's never been isolated to be milked. This is like a known thing among farmers and cow people. They call it milk fever. And so it's not about just being milked because I milk her every day, but it was only when I did a super milk, like I over milked her and totally drained her bag when she wasn't used to that and her body had to make a whole bunch of new milk. That's the only time that it happened. And again, this is a well-known phenomenon. So it was not a stuck conflict because I milk her every day.
And she just stands there.
And she just stands there. And so, yes, that is that. So let's get to, I think maybe we'll chop this up into a couple of different parts, because I do want to get to some of the questions. People sent in some good questions. But we're doing a thing. So I'll tell you about the thing we're doing starting at the end of January on the 29th. We're doing a 5-week instinct and intuition. It's basically a Resolve Foundations refresh, where we're going to go in for 5 weeks and really get into a lot of these topics at a deeper level and help you to apply it. There'll be plenty of time. We always leave lots of open time for Q&A, and you'll get access to the Resolve Foundations course, and then we'll be refreshing all the material. And we'll also do an awareness challenge, which you want to be a part of this. It's going to be so good. It's going to help you to see a lot of the things, help you to really apply this. And so, yes, we'll be doing that. I'll be putting up the info for enrolling in that class later on today. Please write a book. It's in the works. So yeah, let's get to some of the questions. When do you clearly recommend conventional treatment? So the thing about, I don't recommend treatment or not treatment. I talk to a person, and we have to talk about, what do you believe? You know, what do you believe about what's going on? What do you believe about what's happening in your body? There are situations where a person has been in a conflict for a really long time and they haven't resolved it, and it is a hanging healing. So that's when it keeps being reactivated by the tracks. And there are points at which there's a certain amount of tissue adaptation where a surgery is the clear answer, where it's like, listen, yeah, let's still work on this conflict, absolutely, but given the amount of tissue that has adapted. And somebody said earlier in the comments, well, this, it seems unfair. It seems unfair that the body would do this. Why would the body build this extra tissue or what?
You're in so much trouble if you think about anything in life that way. I mean, people don't like to hear that. Fair has nothing to do with anything that happens anywhere except maybe in a preschool classroom. And even there, it's not actually what it's about. So, it's not even a bad remark or a bad question, but if someone comes and says to you, hey, here's how the world works, and the response is, well, that seems unfair, and it's not just a matter-of-fact statement, like, gosh, it's so interesting that that's the way the world works, that seems unfair, tell me more about the way the world works. That seems unfair, and therefore it can't be true, therefore it shouldn't be true, therefore I wish it weren't true, etc. This is just a person out there on the internet. Who cares? I'm not important, right? But it's good to maybe hear this. That is like the framework of a person who is in for a world and a lifetime of hurt. That is a person whose life consists of chronic chafing disappointments and resentments and frustrations about a failure to create the results that they want, because they don't listen to the processes that bring it about. I don't know if this is you, but there are people who sometimes talk like that, and this is a problem for them. You could be you probably are, a very intelligent, very creative person, probably very capable of learning a lot of things and then applying those learnings in ways that allow you to do all sorts of great things in your life that you'll like a lot and help other people and all the good things. But if that fairness filter is the thing, it is a tremendous inhibitor of your ability to take in and process and apply information in ways that will allow you to be like super efficient in creating the sort of results that you want. And so I would say, if I seemed to be preoccupied with notions of fairness, I would want somebody else to go, listen, it doesn't matter how smart and how talented or how worthy or deserving you are, or all the good qualities. This preoccupation with fairness is like a stake in the heart of your ability to avoid suffering and enjoy as much pleasure and positive things as you can in your life. So again, I don't know if it's you. Probably somebody here, though, would do well to, fair ain't got nothing to do with it, kind of a thing. Now, there is a situation, of course, if someone's mistreating you and you know what they're doing, that they could, in a sort of unkind way, say the world isn't fair as a rationalization of their mistreatment of you. I think most people who are watching this can distinguish between that. I'm not, stealing from this person and then, sorry, I think we're having a signal problem. When I'm thinking about how I'm going to treat people, it's nice to think in terms of, well, I'm going to be as fair as I can. When I'm thinking about the world and how I might adjust myself to it in order to create a maximum of what I want, fairness isn't interesting to me. What's interesting to me is what's going to work best. So don't worry, it's not fair and it doesn't matter. You can still use it to create outcomes you want.
Yes, and someone says there's times in GNM where it's not recommended to resolve a conflict. It will mean, death due to conflict load. And that's another thing that people find unfair or they get freaked out about, but it's just, we live in a physical reality that has certain laws. There are laws of nature, there are laws of biology. And so that's why it's so cool to be able to learn these laws of biology so that we can, navigate more consciously within them. That doesn't mean that you can avoid unexpected things. Unexpected things are going to happen, right? It's how am I going to arrive in that moment? Right? Is it going to completely shatter me? Am I going to be able to recognize it swiftly? Someone said also, or asked a question about
just quick, about not resolving them. Being in a conflict about something doesn't mean you have to be miserable. Mm-hmm. And so that's another thing too. If you're going to be, anger is one, right? Isn't territorial anger is basically being pissed off about certain things. Usually it's possible to have a lot more fun being angry about a thing than you are. And so it's kind of like get other areas of your life going really well. Just be sure you keep hating your husband or your ex-husband. Most people don't really have an objection to that. This is almost like a doctor's note in a way to be petty. See, thinking creative about this. I'd love to forgive that son of a bitch, but if I did, I might die. And so I got to stay angry at it. It was like, well, that's great, And then you go and build another really nice life for yourself else. What was it? Growl a little bit, snarl when you walk by, And so it's a little bit of like a doctor's pass to engage in some of the more, what you call them, unlovely human tendencies. So I would be thinking about, what can I get out of this?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, someone asked, what if you go into freeze so fast and there's no choice yet? Yeah, because again, it's not that these things aren't going to happen. These things are going to happen. And the biology is going to respond before your ability to chill out might be able to respond. Ideally we're just all so adaptable and we're all so, conscious and aware and we're responding resourcefully in every moment. But that's not always going to happen, right? We can do our best, and it's like this resilience training, adaptability training is another way to look at this class we're doing, is like, how can I show up to that moment maximally adaptable, maximally able to notice what's going on, notice my reaction, and find a swift solution. Sometimes things are such a big deal. It takes time to even just come up for air. You're completely involved in the conflict until you get some space, right? And that's why, again, in nature, if a woman's child has had an injury, we can say, oh, well, it's, just think positive. It's like, part of her biology is going to be activated until the child, gets out of surgery or until everything's physically okay. And, if there is a prolonged or protracted time where there's uncertainty, there is, yes, you can do your best, right? Do your best to adapt, to downgrade, right? Get out of isolation. That's one of the very best ways, is to share in it, to share in whatever it is that you're going through, But again, there's a sense in which the mother of a child, she's the mother of that child. She is kind of isolated in that experience because, while there are other mothers with other children, this is hers, And so that's where, do your best to downgrade, to talk about it, to get out of the isolation, to share in it, to, and then, we also have the tools, of using the imagination to seeing the outcomes that you want. And so there's so many different ways to work with this knowledge, but as far as, when to recommend conventional treatment, it's always the person's belief system. It's always, what's going on with them. And, sometimes I've found myself trying to convince a person, hey, surgery actually makes sense in this case, but they're so doggedly against any intervention that, again, they have to do what makes sense to them in their model based on their own personal experience. And so from the perspective of GNM, GHK, there are times when intervention is necessary, when medication might be necessary, if something has, if there's been so much adaptation that the body can no longer function in a certain way. Yeah, there are times when, and that's where this would just change the way that we utilize technology and medical intervention and all of the things of medicine. It's not getting rid of it. It would get rid of probably 95% of it. We probably would only need 5% of it, but it's just a different way of approaching it, a different way of looking at it. Sometimes people ask me about blood tests. Well, do I get the blood test? Do I not? The blood test can give you information about biological programs that you're running. Can you look at that information and not get freaked out? can you look at it and say, oh, this is indicating to me that I need to, work on this conflict. Oh, that indicates self-devaluation. That's indicating that I'm feeling powerless. I'm feeling like my hands are tied. Oh, that's what the information can tell you. And so if you're able to interpret it through this lens, it can give you data, it can give you information, but a lot of times people use it as a reason to freak out and to get scared. And so you want to be aware of that. Let's see, what supports the nervous system the most, regardless of the specific conflict? Yeah, and so that's where a lot of times, people who are really into the nervous system work, it's helpful, right? Just to be able to get in touch with your body, like somatic work. Oh, I'm talking to my body. I'm humming, I'm singing, I'm stimulating my vagus nerve so that I can send signals of safety to my body. Safety is always going to be a good thing. So all of these videos that you see on these different, on reels of how to calm your nervous system, those are great tools. Someone I think in the comments asked about EFT tapping. Anything that chills you out is good. Anything that gives you space to start thinking about solutions is going to be helpful. And that's why all of the therapies and all the interventions and all the things that people do, like even, our background as chiropractors, I love getting adjusted. I feel great after getting adjusted, right? And the stimulation to the vagus nerve, when you adjust the upper cervical spine, it's like, it does, there's a relaxation. When someone gets acupuncture, when you get a massage, you're chilling out, right? General chilling out, I would say, is I appreciate that advice. I give that advice to people because finding ways to give yourself that space, because if you are so in your head, in your compulsive thinking, in the conflict, right? You just don't have, it's hard to see solutions when you're down in the weeds. What's going to give you that space, that relaxation? And so, yeah, as far as a general, something that supports the nervous system is relaxing and opening up to solutions. Are you, how do you chronically focus on things? What is your mindset about these things? So there's lots of stuff that you can do there. How do you prevent over-interpreting every symptom? That's a good question.
Stop it.
Stop it.
Watch yourself doing it. Say, I'm over-interpreting this. Here I go. Discipline is not attempting in vain to force yourself to abstain from something that you can't stop yourself from doing. Discipline is forcing yourself to be aware of exactly what it is that you're doing. If you can't stop it, you can't control it. Here I go. I'm about to overeat. I'm not going to go unconscious. I'm not going to check out. I'm going to watch it. And every bite I take, I'm going to say, I'm doing that compulsive behavior. I know that when I'm done doing this, something inside will trigger and it will say, oh, it's time to go. Oh, I can't believe I did that again. You watch it all the way through. Now, the difficulty of watching it all the way through is not that you're judging yourself. You probably will add that in there. That's not correct. That's extra. But you just watch the fact that you're judging yourself too. The difficulty is that when you engage in these compulsive things, like what was it, over interpretation of every symptom. Anytime you succumb to a habitual mental activity, something inside you gets to relax. Like if you've ever had children and planted the children in front of the television, or fobbed the children off on grandmother, friend, neighbor, or something like, there are certain intervals of time when a mother or parent, but especially probably a mother, who's just, I remember one of the only times I've ever been in charge of a child. My half sister came and visited me. She only did it once, and I had to kind of look after her. I mean, she was not a small child, but she was still a child, and I was in chiropractic school at the time. I'd never looked after a child really, I don't think, in my life. And I remember being astonished at how exhausting, the way I kind of call it is like this constant low-level attention that you have to pay in order to monitor a child that you're responsible for. Now, I think, mothers get really good at it, so they're probably able to dial it down way more than I was, but I not knowing, wanted to be kind of on the safe side. But when you're responsible for kids like that, and you get a second where it's like, okay, they're plugged into whatever for a while, they're down for a nap there, whatever, I can kind of relax a little bit. Some part of you kind of goes, I can relax a little bit every time you give yourself over to unproductive negative thinking, because you don't have to think about what you're going to think about. It's like the thoughts think themselves. And so what I'm suggesting is that when that's happening, and it's a negative internal process, force yourself to remain vigilant. Because what you don't want is that it's like, well, I know it's not good for my mind to play video games. I know it's not good for my children to play video games for 3 hours every afternoon, but it's such a relief to not have to worry about them and not have to watch them. And so there's a sense in which we let these negative thought patterns like babysit our mind. And since, so I can't, well, just watch it. Well, there's no point in watching it. I can't control it. I can't stop it. It just upset. Just watch it anyway. And just relax and get good at recognizing you're doing something that doesn't serve you without condemning yourself for it, and without fretting, and without like assenting to any unexamined assumption. Oh, it's a huge problem. This is happening. Oh, it's so bad I can't stop it. Oh, something awful is probably going to happen because I'm thinking about what I don't want. See all these unexamined assumptions? If you'll watch what your mind is doing when it's doing something you don't want it to do, what you'll start to notice over here, you'll never notice us, so you pay attention over here. And when you watch what the mind is doing, you'll start to notice all these assumptions in other areas about how awful it is that the mind is doing that, and about how bad things are going to get because the mind is doing that. You would never become aware of those assumptions if you wouldn't pay attention to what's going on inside your mind. So the resolution that you make with yourself, see, this is self-evaluation, people. I can't control what I'm thinking. I can't help but overanalyze and all this different stuff. Just make a little deal with yourself that says, listen, I might not be able to control what's going on inside my head, but I can watch what's going on inside my head. I can pay attention even when I don't like what I see. I can pay attention even when paying attention doesn't seem to be helping. I can observe what's going on and refuse to check out even when I really want to check out. So just observe and relax. Observe and relax. Observe and let what you see happening be okay. And just repeat that.
Yeah, I love how you explain it. I'm more aware, but my mind with little symptoms goes to worst case health scenario like cancer by default. I have to walk myself out of it. Yeah, it is. It's like noticing the lightning speed. And I've even had experiences like this where it's like, a symptom, and the mind immediately, worst case scenario, oh my gosh, scary, scary, scary. It is. It's like, isn't this interesting that there's a part of my mind that is seizing on this symptom to freak me out, to create, more like, what if I'm freaking out about freaking out, and then I have even more, and this makes it worse. You see how this goes and goes and goes and goes. And so I had to reel it in. I had to pay attention. I had to come back to the biological laws. Why is this happening? Why would there be swelling at this spot right now? Why would there be pain right here, right now? Well, this is this tissue. What does that tissue do? What's its purpose? Okay, what is it that happened to you? And so, and someone did ask that in the questions too. If you have a scary symptom that shows up, like what do? And do you just... Well, one, you have to see, okay, is this something that I understand? Do I understand why this is happening? Do I have a framework for this? Is this based on cross my fingers, hold my breath, I hope GNM is right? Or is this based off of I've seen my body respond in this way this many number of times? I've seen how my biology adapts to my life. I've seen cause and effect. I've made these connections. I understand where symptoms come from, right? There was a couple months ago, I, resolved something and I had such a headache. Headache is brain swelling. That means that I resolved something and I'm in healing, right? And I was like, it's so interesting. It was just fascinating to have a headache. I haven't had a headache in forever. And so that is, I just put a little cold pack on my head and chilled out. But when you're in the midst of it, it can be difficult. But what you do about it and how you handle it, again, depends on your belief system. That's why this is a model where you are taking 100% personal responsibility. It's not a script. Someone doesn't give you, here, do this, don't do that. This is what you're going to do to be okay. It has to make sense to you what you're doing and why you're doing it. So this is a self-learning process. You have to learn in the field. The field is you, your body, your experience. You have to get some reps of like seeing how this works. You have to notice and pay attention. And so ideally, and that's why it is unfortunate when a person kind of comes into this already with like something big going on where they don't have, or they haven't had the experience with a lot of more like low level things. I got a little itch there. I've got a pimple here. I'm got a sty in my eye, and you start to see, and I had an upset stomach and had diarrhea. It's like, I get what happened. Cause and effect with lower level things. If you're coming into this already with a big thing, it's a little more difficult to adopt. And sometimes, again, if the person's already had a diagnosis, like in a medical sense, and they're already kind of down that track, it becomes even more difficult because, the diagnosis itself holds a power, and often the moment of receiving the diagnosis was a shock, or the moment that you had that symptom, assuming it was something bad and scary, that can also create a shock. So there's lots of layers and levels and, ways to, that you've come into this information. And so we just kind of start where you are. Someone else asked a question. It's like, well, if you have like hundreds of symptoms and you could have hundreds of, I'm just so overwhelmed. Okay, overwhelm is a way that you're approaching life, right? Overwhelm is about the way that you're perceiving and thinking about the situation. You could just go, okay, here's a new model that I'm drawn to, makes sense to me. I can make some connections already, and let me see, can I just notice a little more today, right? You really want to integrate this in your life a little bit at a time through awareness. If you try to apply everything and overwhelm yourself, that's not going to help. But a lot of times people do that out of their default thinking patterns. They're not aware of how they engage with information, right? They see information, and then the information takes over their mind, and then they're not in control, and they're feeling overwhelmed and helpless, and like, oh, well, this is, some people will sometimes feel like, oh, I learned about GNM and now I'm even more freaked out. And that's what Steve calls grabbing the information by the blade instead of the handle. You're not using it in a way that's helpful to you. If you're starting to use it in a way that's harmful to you, that's where, again, we have to zoom out. That's where the awareness challenge that we're going to be doing at the end of the month is going to really, really help you to see your default patterns for engaging with information. Like, what are your automatic assumptions? How do you show up to this material? If it's already freaked out, panicked, overwhelmed, it's going to be hard to adopt and integrate this.
Yeah, if you got like a million conflicts, it seems to me like you have a hard time walking from one room to the other without potentially resolving it. It's like catching fish in a well-stocked pond. That's how I would think about it, right? I got so much going on. I probably would resolve something by mistake. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like, once I get the hang of it. See, people have this idea that says, well, once I master this, then my life will start. Once I get out of this health scare, once I resolve these symptoms, once I'm not dealing with what I'm dealing with currently, then my real life begins. And it's like, no, your real life begins now or never. And so if you just kind of make whatever it is you have currently going on a part of your life project, not a little inconvenient detour that you wish that you didn't have to deal with and that you feel like you've already wasted too much time on, it becomes much easier to approach this in a way that's going to be useful. So if you've got a dozen conflicts, well, good news is some of them are going to probably be easier to resolve than others. Okay? And so why don't you just kind of start there? And, once you get a hang of this, especially like the big picture principle stuff, it really doesn't matter. There's this thing, because there's a difference between a person saying, hey, I've got all this going on, which is the reason why this is not going to work for me, versus, hey, I've got all this stuff going on, so how do you think it'd be best for me to go about this? And you can tell the difference in the tone. And if you listen to your internal dialogue, you would know how much of your inner conversations you shouldn't be trusting. That's the conflict talking, you know what I mean? Or that's the conflicted part of me that's talking. One of the things is like, find a part of you inside that's totally okay with the fact that everything is as it currently is. Because you have to learn how to not let things be okay. Right? That's a learned thing. Like being afraid. There's not a scary symptom. There's just a symptom. It's just a physical sensation. You've learned to be afraid of it. Television, family member experiences, scary commercials and things like this. And so examine the fear. How do I know to be afraid of this? What exactly is that fear made of? Maybe it's fine and I'm afraid of this. Maybe this fear is unnecessary, and maybe it's okay. See, you start interfacing with your mental behavior, with what's going on internally, in a way that's useful, and it's a very kind of modest. There's a part of you inside that thinks that it doesn't have time for this crap because you've got real problems. That part is like your real problem. That part is the real problem factory. The real solution is just re-examining your basic assumptions about everything. And I don't mean about like whether or not Donald Trump is a good guy or a bad guy. I'm talking about like your basic assumptions about how it makes sense for you to approach reality and to perceive and experience and respond to whatever has your attention. Actual, really basic foundations. And a lot of that is like there's this assumption that goes, I need to be uptight, I need to be freaked out, I need to be resistant, I need to be hostile, I need to be tense. There's something that I'm doing that's not okay. There's something that's happening that's not okay. There's something going terribly wrong, and I must fix it 5 minutes ago. All of those there's no point in resolving the conflicts that you have if you're going to stay somebody who is that predisposed to you do all the work and resolve all those conflicts, and then there's a leaf that's going to fall down outside the window, and you're going to have another one. Do you see what I'm saying? Because there are certain things about my fundamental relationship to reality that makes me so predisposed to being upset about things that go on. And also, probably unwittingly, I unconsciously and unintentionally attract and am attracted to people, situations, and circumstances that virtually guarantee that I'm going to experience additional conflicts in my life. So you get to a certain point where you regard the conflicts as assistants or aids or servants that are allowing you to discover things that are true about yourself and your relationship to reality. See, now we're not adversarial. Now we're not assuming that the conflict is the enemy. The conflict is a mirror. The conflict is an invitation to discover something about myself. Maybe it's an invitation to discover some new way of being or some new way of relating to my world that will reward me in ways that go beyond simply like, I had a conflict, now I don't, life is better without it kind of a thing. That you can actually go into a way of being that's actually much better. So that's that. Find that part within you that's willing to consider the possibility that in this moment things are exactly like they're supposed to be for this moment. And see, then now we can begin to intelligently, which is to say things are other than I would like for them to be. How do I go about changing those things as quickly and as efficiently as possible without being resistant to that stuff? Because there's a difference in wanting to resolve a conflict and believing that the conflicts that you have, you should not have right now. Those are completely different. Wanting to resolve the conflicts, like, gee whiz, I think I got a lot of conflicts. Let's see what I can do about that. Feeling like it's existentially, cosmically wrong that you have the conflicts that you do, that's where you get overwhelmed. That's where you go into resistance. That's where you get freaked out. That's when you get agitated. That's when you feel worse after reading about GNM than you did before you read about it. If you're going to kind of eat from the tree of knowledge, then you want to be really disciplined in how you employ the knowledge that you come about. And that's grab the handle, not the blade. That's if the information doesn't make me feel better, I have a couple of options. Either just throw it in the garbage, disregard it, forget it, think about something else, or say, hang on, I need to find a way to think about this that doesn't hurt. I need to find a way of integrating this that does not make my life worse. And that's just that discipline. That's discipline that goes, okay, if we're going to do this, if we're going to do it, you have to do it in this way. Make these deals with yourself.
Yeah, and that's really what we do, because there are times that we say, no more GNM for you, right? It's like you need to like toss this and get your mind off of it for a while because you have unconsciously been engaging in it in a way that is not serving you. And then, the people are like, all right, I want to use this in a way that works. Come hang out. come to the class, hang out with us for 5 weeks, dive into this understanding, this application, this information, find a way that you can just see it for what it is. Oh, okay, this is what the map says. This is, the map of GNM says this and this and this. Okay, this is my experiential territory, and will help you to see how this map can show you things about what's going on in here. And then we can use these, this amazing tools for shifting experience, for really, most conflicts. Someone asks, how do you resolve a conflict? Most of your conflicts are going to be resolved through your instinct and intuition. And that's just your way of going through life and resolving, what's going on.
What would it take? The magic question? Sometimes people don't like this question, but it's a magic question. What would it take for me to not give a fuck about this? That's the magic question. Think about it. I'm so angry about this. I'm so upset about this situation. Just notice how the mind, it's like a dog with a bone, right? When you're really, whether it's sad or whether it's disappointed or whether it's self-loathing or whether it's anger at another person or whether it's whatever, it's just gnawing at it. There's a gnawing component to it, right? And then, when you get the sinew off, there's still the marrow and then all this different stuff, right? Dog with a bone. And watch the reluctance there is. What would it take for me to not care about this? What would it take for me to not be fixated on this? Or we say, what would it take for me to feel completely different about this situation? Or look at how you're seeing life as a whole, that situation, and how you feel about it, and say, what would it take for me to see life in a way that's completely different? See, this is sort of like the anti-conflict, because what did you say? Life and the world looks different. You see the world differently after you've experienced the conflict. Okay, well, gee whiz, let's see. Sorry, we're going in and out here. Better wrap it up. That's the practical solution. Begin to imagine what it would be like to see the rest of the world in a completely different way. Sometimes you can resolve these conflicts indirectly, which is that maybe the situation doesn't change, but you so change the rest of your world that the role that situation plays in your overall life experience is very different. Maybe then that allows you to go and resolve that specific situation. So what you're looking at, just study, you've already resolved conflicts, almost guaranteed, without even meaning. Conflict resolution is not something that waits until a person hears about GNM. People, like you said, like some people have mentioned, several people mentioned, people always mention this. There's some conflicts that you shouldn't resolve. Yes, that's true. And sometimes people who have no idea about GNM resolve those conflicts and they keel over and they die, right? This is the territorial thing, right? The man doesn't, you don't need to know about GNM in order to resolve your conflicts. And so observe your past history and think about a time when you were really upset about something or really hung up on something and the whole world seemed to be down to that. Life is all about that now. And then what's the difference between how you felt then and how you feel now? When you got over it, what was getting over it like? What caused you to get over it? You know, sometimes for me, it's like, I need to work out. Like, honestly, I need to be, you know what I mean? It's so, like, and I've just heard in my personal life, the best way I know to change how I feel about one area of life, go take really good care of my other areas of life. And that either solves the problem or it prepares me to deal effectively with that area. So it's not about sitting down and kind of psychologizing and stuff like that. Do the things that you need to do in order to have the clarity to understand what's smart for you to do here. And what's smart for you to do might not be what's romantic. It might not be what's nostalgic. It might not be what happened in the movie or the storybook. Do you know what I mean? When a relationship ends, the romantic thing to do is go, oh, forever. And she locked herself away, or she never recovered, and all that different stuff. You know, the thing that you need to do, the thing that's smart to do, the thing that feels good to do, oftentimes is go find yourself another man. Go, and like, the thing is, sometimes thinking about the prospect of the resolution doesn't feel good. Actually doing the thing that will resolve the conflict often does. If you're not over it and someone suggests getting over it, the idea of getting over it, there's a great song called I Don't Want to Get Over You. It's called The Woollitzer Prize or something like that, right? And the whole idea is this guy's upset about the end of a relationship. And he goes, I don't want to get over you. Well, what he's doing is he's thinking about getting over a woman he's still in love with. And because he's still in love with her, he goes, I don't want to do that. Well, but see, if he did it, then he would be so much happier. He wouldn't feel sad about getting over her once he got over her. So you don't want to think about the practical solution as the person who's currently conflicted. You want to think about who you're going to be once this isn't an issue anymore. Oh boy. Oh, that's just so simple. That's so clear. That's so easy. So it's about that. It's about finding something that makes your animal happy. Think about that. Not your movie watcher, not your social media watcher, not your inner poet, your animal. What's going to make the animal happy, right? And it's going to be more food. It's going to be maybe more money. It's going to be a change of scenery. Get your own territory. Oh, I shouldn't need territory. Spiritually, the world belongs to everybody. Well, that's not how your animal feels about it. Your animal wants a place. Your animal wants a partner. Your animal wants more bones to chew on, right? And so that's what it wants. You want a simple solution, go find that. It also makes you a very proactive and engaged person in the world. And so when it comes to resolving conflicts, find out what you really care about, not what you think you should care about, and do something about it practically in the real world.
And we will wrap here because this has been so fun. And you guys are so welcome. Thank you for being here. We're going to do a couple of more live videos leading up to our class that starts on the 29th of January. It'll be a Thursday evening Pacific time thing, and it'll be 5 weeks, and you're going to want to be there. It's going to be super, super fun. We're going to go deep. We're going to do awareness work as well as understanding and integrating the biological wisdom. So it's going to be good. We'll see you there. Have a great day.
See ya.
Bye.